Hello, everybody. Welcome. My name is Olivia, and I'm so glad to see all of you today at our gathering of Face to Face with Elephants, our very last Living One series of 2025. For those of you who don't already know, Living One is the Carrillo Center for Nonviolence's webinar series, now in its 6th year. The Carrillo Center for Nonviolence is a nonprofit dedicated to generating deep commitment and connection with the world and within ourselves, dissolving divides between human, plant, and animal, mind and body, science and spirit, and self and nature. Through teachings, practice, and community, Carrillo's catalyzes a shift in how we live, relate, and belong, because healing begins when we remember that we were never apart. This special Living One series, Face to Face with Elephants, celebrates elephants as individuals with diverse, insightful speakers who describe a particular elephant they have known and the psychological depths they have witnessed and journeyed together. In these unique Living One discussions, we plunge into the human and elephant psyches and the transformative journey they experienced when living and connecting beyond species bounds. Thank you for joining us. Today, we are thrilled to welcome Therese Lilliesköld. Therese is an anthrozoologist, an author, and currently a PhD student. Her research is centered around questions of knowledge of more than human animals as knowledge bearers and possible decision makers in societal planning, as well as on human knowledge production behind decisions affecting other animals. Her previous work has been within animal protection with a wide range of topics, from the link between violence towards human and other animals to trauma and the emotional life of companion animals. One of her books, When Elephants Dream, is published in Swedish, but has recently been translated to English. It's a memoir about the time Therese spent as a caretaker of young, traumatized elephants in Thailand. The bond she developed with an elephant who died at a young age taught her about the capacities for strong emotions, grief, as well as their spiritual abilities. Therese is an ambassador for elephants for World Animal Protection in Sweden. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge that we are all currently on various indigenous lands. I am currently on the ancestral homelands of the Council of the Three Fires, which includes the Ojibwa, Ottawa, and Potawatomi. This land exists also as a place of trade with other indigenous communities, including the Ho-Chunk, Miami, Menominee, Sauk, and Meskwaki. The Carrillo Center for Nonviolence is located on the homelands of the grizzly bear, takelma, daku betete, coyote, coho salmon, golden eagle, and gray wolf. Finally, we ask that all of us participate today with full respect and attention to each other in the spirit of peace and wisdom that Living One seeks to foster. So without further ado, we welcome Izzy and Therese. Thank you, everybody.
Olivia, thank you so very much. And Therese, it's wonderful to have you with us. You and I have known each other for some time. We connected, I think, initially at an anthrozoology conference a couple of years ago and have been in contact ever since. And it was maybe about a year ago that I learned that you had written this book and had these incredible experiences with young elephants. But before we get there, maybe you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, introduce yourself, and explain how you came to be from not so sunny Sweden in Thailand looking after young elephants.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Olivia, for that introduction as well. I'm very, very happy to be here. And yes, I live in Sweden. I went first to Malaysia when I was 19, where I had the opportunity to spend time with a wild herd of Borneo pygmy elephants. And that was I was an intern at an ecotourism company. So they wanted to habituate these elephants, which is something I today would not say is a good thing, but at the time we thought so. But I got to spend time with them, so I learned a little bit about elephants there. And then later on, when I was 24, so that was in 2002, it's been 23 years, I wanted to meet elephants again, and I didn't know a lot about it. It was quite different then. The whole market of voluntourism hadn't started, but there was a place where you could go to visit for a week, and I went there. I didn't know anything about the situation for elephants in Thailand, but I went there and as things happened, I ended up staying for a long time there. And I'm going to tell you today about it, but I think I have to also start by saying, I'm sure many of you know, but that I wouldn't encourage people to go as a volunteer to meet elephants today. There are, after this time when I was there, the whole like boom of places bringing in paying volunteers, it sort of exploded, and there's a lot of money in it, and quite a lot of people learned about the training of elephants, and they didn't want to participate in like elephant riding and things like that, but they still had this deep longing to be close to elephants, and were willing to pay a lot for that. And so when there is a lot of money involved, there are lots of dangers to the animals. So there's really been a market of paying volunteers. And when I published the book about my experiences, I think my largest fear was that it wouldn't be clear to people that I don't encourage people to go and be close to elephants. This was really not what I wanted. And I tried to explain it at the end of the book, how I see elephants in captivity and the dangers of being close to them, and that true sanctuaries wouldn't allow free contact or contact with short-term visitors, and elephants is really not in their interest, which I'm sure you know, but I still always want to explain it before saying this. But this was a different time, and a lot of things happened when we were there, which made it different. Yeah.
Sorry. While you were there, what was the setup like? You got there. So just paint us a brief picture of, there's you, did you say 24? You go into this place kind of naive. You've known a little bit about pygmy elephants in the wild, but that's it. So what were you immediately faced with before we get on to talking about the characters of these individual elephants who you grew very close to?
Yeah, I learned very quickly, because this was exactly at the time when the first film of the breaking process of an elephant was released. Before then, I think not so many people knew how elephants were trained, so to speak, which, again, I'm sure you know, but the breaking process is a process of torture, basically. And there was a film of this being released and going viral around the world. So a lot of people realized that this is the way the elephants are treated in order to behave in the tourism industry. And this was a shock to me as well, but I learned about it because one of our elephants that we had there was the one in the film. So she came directly rescued from the training process there. So while I was there, I wasn't very much in contact with the whole outside world, and it was different then. I mean, there was no social media in the same way as now. So I didn't know much about how this film was going global and how people reacted to it. But it affected the way our time there ended up. Yeah.
And so who was there when you got there? What was the setup like?
There were 3 young elephants of different ages. The oldest one was 4 years old. So they were basically babies, all 3 of them. They were very young. And that was it. There were no adult elephants. So after a very short while, we, as in 3 Western volunteers were there, were left with the elephants together with 3 caretakers who were from the Karen tribe. But the others were not there. So we very quickly learned how to take care of these animals and how to and who they were really. And it was all very new to me. I had lots of experience with animals, but not with elephants. And I didn't have experience of human children either. So I started to learn that these were really like young children.
And I think we've got some photographs of each of the individuals. So maybe we could talk about them one by one, and you could tell a little bit about your story and what your relationship was like. And as I have the pictures, so I wanted to check which individual do we want to start with?
Yes, maybe we start with the oldest one, Jabu. I'm very, very thankful that you have the pictures so that I didn't have to navigate that.
Can you see a screen with 3 pictures? Can you see anything?
I
No,
did, but not
it
now.
flashed up. It flashed up and went. Okay. My technical ability is obviously proving not to be so good. Okay, now you should be able to see there. Oops.
Now we see it, yes, or at least I do. I think the others as well, yes. And as you see, I really have lots of pictures of them, but it was very difficult to find one of Jabu, only Jabu, because he was constantly in contact with Op, who was the middle age. The elephant was 2 years old that you see in the pictures. They were always in physical proximity, always touching, always when they slept on top of each other. They were always close. But Jabu is the large one here that you see there holding Hope.
And we have this one of Jabu as well.
Mm.
So what was Jabu like?
She was such a warm, loving, and caretaking soul. She was just 4, and when she arrived, as I said, she came straight from the breaking process. She was in a very bad shape, and he wasn't sure if she would survive. But when Hope arrived shortly after that, she started to regain her sense of life because she took care of him. So they became like sister and brother. They were unrelated, but they became so close, and they sort of helped each other to come back to be in contact with their emotions again. And she was such a funny individual. She could really fool around, joke, and do lots of funny stuff, and was very, very gentle and loving. But there was a difference from her, from the 2 others who had not been through the breaking process, as if she somehow, some of her emotions were limited, like she couldn't really express everything. And I think this was a result from the process, because it's basically to teach an animal to go into learned helplessness, that they should give up all their sense of having anything to say.
And Hope next, or Jingmei?
Yes, Hope is fine.
Here we go.
Again, not alone in all the pictures, but here he is, and Jabu standing above and swimming.
You took them swimming every day, didn't you?
Yes, they loved to go swimming, and I think they enjoyed feeling so light, as in being in the water. They could be light, even though they're very heavy animals, even as small ones. And they really love to fool around and in the water and play.
And you see that baby hair on her head as well. It's so sweet.
Yes, very, very sweet.
What's happening here?
He is just fooling around. Basically, it's cut bamboo, because Jabu was not getting milk anymore. Hope did get milk, which was a mixture of pumpkin and milk extract. And Gimai, the youngest one, also had that. But Jabu just had bamboo. And so we cut bamboo every day. And here, I think someone has tried to put it on the wagon, but he's making a bit of a joke of it by trying to climb into it. So they were joking a lot, like really fooling around a lot.
Oh.
And he's sleeping. And as you see, Jabu is always close by. When he was sleeping, she was always standing close by. Like when sleeping was the time when they got in contact with difficult emotions, like nightmares and memories, and they could wake up screaming. And so they were always close to each other.
That must have been so. I mean, you were a young woman, and you didn't know what dealing with a traumatized animal was going to be like. I mean, how did you understand what they needed? How did you understand what was going on? I mean, did you think they were sick, or what were you? How did this process of understanding develop within you?
I think it started because we didn't receive it like in speaking with others, because we got very close to the caretakers who were there, but they didn't speak English, so we couldn't like talk about it. But I think I just saw the way that especially one of them acted with the babies. Like, he always comforted them, he was always close, he was holding them when they were terrified, just stroking and being close to them. And I think the nightmares especially was what made us understand that they had that they carried this trauma. It wasn't like known, as I write in the book. It was a while after I came back home that I found Gay's research, and it was such a comfort for me to realize that this has actually been researched and shown that elephants do suffer from trauma. It wasn't something that we sort of knew, but we felt it. Like, we became very close to them, and then we felt it. Like, we felt in our bodies that they were terrified and had all these memories. It was evident. But it was mostly when they were sleeping. Like, in the daytime, they could play and they could play around and be very happy. But like, when they fell asleep, the nightmare started. But not actually with Jabu so much. And I don't know exactly why. I think it was like hers was more internal, but the other ones would more express it. And as you see here, there is a chain on the side. There were Hope was chained during the night, which is sad, but it was what was felt that it needed to be done there. So I just wanted to explain the chain, because it's not something that is encouraged to put chains.
Was there someone with them all the time? Was that what you and the carers did? There were always people around with them?
Yes, there was. In the first period of time I was there, none of us, only one of the caretakers could be close to Hope, because he was acting out a lot. He was very aggressive towards people. That was his way of dealing with the experiences that he had had. He lost his mother at a very young age, and was abused by people. So that was his way of sort of acting out the trauma. So this was after a longer time, when I got close to him as well, that I had developed this bond with him. And then someone was always with Gigmai. Someone was the youngest one. Someone was always sleeping close to him. Jabu and Hope slept together, so there someone went to them when they woke up with nightmares or had this need. Yes, this is the youngest, Gingmai, and this picture is actually when he was ill, which I think you might see from the picture. It was very close to his death. This picture was taken. He was 1 year old, so he was very young. And he's feeling better. And this is me putting him to sleep during the night. And so this is how I spent like every evening. I would lay down and I would sleep together with him.
And so how did this affect you? I mean, do you know what's happened to these people since? Because it came to an end, didn't it? You were there, and then all of a sudden you were told, "Oh, well, that's it. Your internship's over. Off you go." And that must have felt brutal. But do you know what the situation was for these three?
Yeah, it wasn't really an internship. It was just the first week was more like a formal. I was there as a visitor, and then the situation changed and became like we just stayed and we lived there for a long while. But yes, we had to leave, and there was let's see, I have to think about how to phrase this. What happened was that when I was there, we lost King Mai, and I'm not gonna talk in detail about that, but he died in a very brutal way. So after that, we took care of the other two, whose reactions were very strong to this, of course, this loss. And that is when I developed this strong bond with Hop, because he needed that after that.
It must have been, appalling for him to, just have started to get close to someone again, to start trusting people. Because as you said, he hadn't been trusting people, and then he starts to develop this place where he starts to feel he's okay, and then Gyingmai is gone.
Yes.
So that it must have been heartbreaking for you to witness
Yes.
this. I mean,
Yes.
heartbreaking for him and for Hop too,
Yes.
for Jabu as well.
I think. Sometimes a young elephant can die from a severe trauma. It can be deadly for them. I think Hope and Jabu also survived because of each other, because they still had this ongoing relationship. But it was very, very difficult for them.
And how did you handle it? Because as you said, at the time, there wasn't, I mean, Elephants on the Edge hadn't yet been written. And so,
No.
so it was still, I mean, not you, but a lot of the world was still in this paradigm of, well, animals don't really have complex emotions. And, it's just, if an elephant's acting out, well, that's a bad elephant or that's a dangerous elephant. And so it must have been very hard for you to process the experiences that you had there.
Yes, afterwards, I was in a very bad shape because I had to leave Hope against my will. But I went after some time to a therapist, and I realized I couldn't tell her what I needed help with. So I just told her that this true story of what happened, but I just talked about them as two boys, two little boys. And I never said what species they were, and she never asked, obviously, because she assumed they were human. So I didn't lie, but I just kept that species part out of it. And she helped me to understand that I also had PTSD from the experience, which she hadn't done if I had said they were elephants. But no, people definitely did not understand. If I tried to talk about it, I think the reaction was more like, "Oh, but it sounds amazing to be close to an elephant like that. Like I might do that." So I quickly stopped talking about it. And it took me 10 years to write a book. But then I felt I needed to write it, and I just wrote it like that.
Why did you feel that you needed to write it?
I think what started it was that the friend that I had been there with ended her contact with me, and this started something in me that made me realize that I had to phrase what happened. So I think I just sat down and wrote it. Like I just wrote it in a very short time. And I think first I somehow I think I also I wanted to I wrote it for myself, but I also felt that this was something I wanted to share. But as I said, I was very afraid that people would take it as an encouragement to go and try to be close to an elephant. Like so it took me another 8 years before I published it. But I also had this feeling that there is something that I need to share, and because that people need to understand that humans are not so different, and that we need to understand their emotions and the complexity of their emotions.
And in the book, it sounds as if those relationships, I mean, Gay often talks in the sense of, relating to someone beyond form. And it sounds as if the relationships that you had with, with both Gyingmai and with Hop were like that they transcended the sort of physicality.
Yes, I think somehow, because of all these things that were going on, like politically in Thailand at the time, since we were left very much on our own, the group of people with the elephants and the dogs, and we were sort of sheltered, and we could just be in contact with what is actually always there, but that we normally don't feel. So it was like we became really one kind of consciousness, all of us, and it was just not strange that we picked up on each other's emotions and communicated like that. And I think this is something, just today, a friend of mine sent me that there is a researcher here in Sweden in physics who is developing a proof that consciousness comes first. Before time and space and materia and everything, there is consciousness, and that we basically all belong to this large consciousness, all of us. And she's sort of trying to prove it within physics, which is, to me, like, okay, yes, we could do that, but I mean, it's just one other way of looking at it. But yeah, but I think this was such a special situation that we could just get in contact with it, really, that you don't normally do, like in life here.
Well, no, that was something I was going to say, because the experience was harrowing and painful and traumatic. At the same time, it had this depth and this purity and integrity that, as you say, you don't have in normal life. So there must have been a peculiar sense within you of both, not wanting to experience it again, but at the same time, this desire to have that kind of pure and intense connection again. And I'm wondering what it was like to deal with that.
Yes, it was very, very hard. It was 2 years that I basically just tried to survive after coming back to Sweden. And after that, I think in different ways, I have worked with this longing, and in different ways, and I think found a way to carry it with me, even though I am not there, as in accepting sort of what happened. But I always miss them, and I always, and this is also what I wanted to describe as in relation to not going to try to be in contact with an elephant for a short time, that this is really not an amazing thing that you do and then you let go, like how it affected me. I will always be grateful for what I experienced, but it has affected me, and it will always affect me. It will never end, that longing.
What impact did it have on your ethics, your personal ethics, to have this deep experience of connection? And I'm going to stop sharing now so that
I think quite a lot. I have a cat who is struggling to get into my lap here, so I'm trying to adjust the computer. And I think I always had the same sense of ethics, and I have done things like with other animals that I'm not completely proud of, but it hasn't been like, as when I meet people, because I've been working a lot with people who have worked with animals and who have gone like left their ethics because of authorities, because people telling them that they have to, and they have to train animals in a certain way or whatever, and done things that they really, really suffer from having done. And I never done that. I haven't been violent to animals in that way. But what it did afterwards was that it made me completely unable to in any way go against my ethics. Like, I just cannot do that. And I think that's something that happened, like, as when I studied biology, and I went back to try to do my degree in animal behavior, and it was horrific to listen to all these descriptions of what we do with animals, but I still tried to do that. But when I came to my master dissertation, I was supposed to do animal testing on dogs. It was not the subject of my dissertation, but I was supposed to help out with animal testing, and then I left. So I never got my degree or anything, which people thought was incredibly stupid since I studied for 5 years or something. But it was just impossible for me. Like my body wouldn't do it. Like it just couldn't happen. So I think that was an effect from this.
Yeah, a powerful effect. And what has the reaction been to the book having been published in Sweden? Because it's been when did it come out in Sweden?
In 2020, so it's been
Okay, so
5
it's been
years.
for a while.
Yeah. So right in the pandemic, start of the pandemic, it came out. Yes.
Okay, so people had a good time to sit and read. So what have
Yes.
people said to you, aside from, oh, I want to go and cuddle an elephant, which you didn't want to encourage, but what other
Yes.
things have people said?
Yeah, no, very few people have actually said that, which I am very relieved by but I think the main reaction, I think there's two things that I had a reaction from. One was that people are very affected, like they thank me for getting in contact with their grief. Like people connect to grief that they are having in some kind of way. I mean, all of us carry grief in somehow. And this is a very, very common reaction that I had, that people say that they really got in contact with that and that they are grateful for that. And I think, or I'm starting to think a lot, that this is something that we really need to be in contact with more. That it is a problem that we're not, like as in the situation that the world is today and the climate crisis and everything, and we are presenting it as facts and graphs and temperature rising, but we need to get in contact with what does this do to us? Like, how do we feel about it more?
Yes, and you mentioned the sense of grief, and it's a very sort of embodied sense. I mean, I feel with you that it's a very holistic thing. It's how you feel. It's how you said my body just couldn't cope with that. So there is this very powerful sense that that grief it's not just something that's in the head. It's in the heart. It's in the stomach. It's in the bones. It's in the muscles. And as you suggest, people could be holding a lot of that.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. And also the other reaction that I got, since I do write about what we call spiritual experiences, it's a very human thing to sort out some things as spiritual and some things not, I think. But for lack of a better word, I describe that. And quite a lot of people, and also academics or others, have told me that they also have experiences, but that they would never tell anyone or talk about it because that would make people miscredit them. And like people would look down on my research. People would think that I'm not professional or like that. But they tell me that, okay, but I recognize this. I also have experiences. And this I find fascinating because I haven't actually experienced that people, I mean, of course, there can be people who think that I'm absolutely crazy to describe that and just don't tell me. So I don't know, but I haven't had really that experience of people actually looking down on me for describing that. So I think we are very afraid we try to sort out things like this is normal, this is life, and that is something else, and we don't talk about it.
That's interesting. I don't know if you're happy just to give us a sense now of what are the kind of spiritual things in the book that you're referencing there.
Yes, I think the main experience that I have, I think I'm not gonna try to describe here now, but there was experiences of being my after his death, and also communication from him to me about hope and what he needed, and what we would call telepathy or just picking up on emotions, even if we were not close. I mean, some of them were like we realized, we talked about that the elephants seem to know when or get like they seem to get information from the ground. And we didn't know what to do with that. And then later on again, because this research had not come out, but later on Katie Payne show that they do pick up on sounds through the ground. So I mean, some things are explained by that, and we didn't, that part we actually didn't think about as something else. We just were like, okay, but it seems like they communicate through, like they get who is coming through the footsteps, but they can't possibly hear, and what is going on, with sounds. And they have a lot of abilities like that they pick up on sounds on the ground, and the low frequency sounds that research hadn't caught up with yet then. But there were also other things that could not be explained by that, and especially the communication from Gimai.
Did you feel very vulnerable writing about that in the book? And I mean, you mentioned that some of these people who were academics had said, "Well, I wouldn't say that," and you have not experienced any negative backlash from that. But how did you experience the opening out of that? Those personal experiences.
I think at the time that I wrote it, I didn't feel vulnerable, but I also had 2 small children. I was very much in contact with this strong love, and like that also opened up things in me. So I felt very safe from that. When publishing it, I did have thoughts that, okay, I'm not sure how people will take this, but I somehow felt that it didn't really matter because I had to share it.
And in your because you're a postdoctoral researcher, what's the proper title for? I can never work out what the proper title is in academia. What with being someone who's only got a BA, but still, at least I've got one.
Now, do you mean now, or
yes? What's his? Yes.
I'm a PhD student now. I went back to academia a few years ago, so I haven't been in academia, which probably helped also with this. I've been self-employed and been working with other things, but I have gone back to academia.
So now that you're back in that academic fold, do you feel like you could incorporate any of because you're writing about animals, and do you feel it would be valid to say, well, we could try intuitive interspecies communication to understand where the animals are crossing the roads and where we need to have an underpass or an overpass or something? Because it seems to me as if the climate is more open to that, particularly probably in the sort of in Europe, in continental Europe.
Yeah, I would say that a large part of academia is completely closed to it, definitely, and also completely closed to any kind of connection to emotions and embodied states, and like it's a lot of living upstairs, as a recent film has come out where the director calls it, the researchers that he's looking at climate researchers and their non-connection to emotions, and he says they're all living upstairs, like they're just in their head, because they are taught, it's really taught that to be professional is to be in the head and not be emotional, not be not to have a sense of a body or something. But there is also research on, like, Vanessa Wingarden, if some of you have heard about her. She is doing a large and EU-funded research project about intuitive interspecies connections, communication. So she has, I think, several PhDs now. So I think I met her at a conference last year, and postdocs working on this. And they're also working with several indigenous groups, like the Sami in Finland. They live also in Sweden, but in Finland, and Aborigines in Australia, and several other groups all over the world, like with their traditions and their experiences. So there is research on it as well, but I wouldn't say that it's generally looked upon as something properly academic. No.
I ought to open this up and see if anyone else would like to ask any questions about your experience. And I know one of the people that we have here, saw Michelle. Michelle's still here, is she? Yes, Michelle, because I was who's on the stewardship council as well of Kerelos, and Michelle works. She has a close and loving relationship with elephants in an important caring capacity. So I'm sure would sort of second much of what you've said about the need to have people there constantly rather than going away. But if anyone does wish to ask a question, if you just want to put something in the chat or raise your hand, now is the opportunity.
I'll just say, Therese, I'm just engrossed and just loving everything that you're talking about, because it really hits home. And it's interesting. Just before I got on here, I had a memory come up on Facebook for the time that I was in India, and with three particular girls that had finally reached sanctuary, and I was there to help, kind of implement the practices and such. And they had all been, chained together for decades in the same temple and such. And so they went through all of that. And so just seeing them also, kind of try to find each other again. Of course, they were all mature adults at that point, but those bonds and those ties and that absolute just drive to be very conscious of where they each were, and just being, that was the number one priority for them, is where were they in relation to the others, especially when they reach sanctuary. But yes, and then and I was really feeling for you with having to lose was it Gingmai?
Ingmar, yes.
Gingmai, and but then also having to be wrenched out of there, and without the powers that be, with any consideration of obviously of what rupture and psychic tears that caused on both sides for everyone. Th because this kind of similarly happened with these three girls, is that then 3 years into their being in sanctuary and in their healing journey, they were forced back onto trucks and then forced back into a forest camp. Type of,
Okay.
yeah. So all of that devastation. So I hear you, but I also I totally get your relationship and how tight and how just how emotional it all is. And I really applaud you and thank you for starting off by saying, don't go and think that you can get up close like that. It's just, you're completely sending the wrong message. I've had those experiences with horses on breeding farms too, where I've watched them, get hauled out in trailers being sold, and they're screaming, so anyway, thank you. And it's really an honor and a privilege and a pleasure to meet you and absorb your story. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That was beautiful. And yeah, thank you for sharing. It's yeah.
Kindred spirits. We're all kindred spirits here, but
yes,
for sure.
Absolutely, yes. And yeah, I think with horses, I know a lot of people who have really, really difficult emotions about horses, because they're sold basically like things, and they're valuable, so they are really bought and sold. And to be without power in that situation, and yeah, can really devastate, like young girls that I work with who are devastated by that. So, but also this wanting to be close. I find it a bit. I don't know. I think a lot of people actually have this very strong longing to be close to what we here would consider exotic animals, like as in you have to go there, you have to go far away and do that, which I think mirrors some kind of I don't know, lack of connection to where you actually live. And a lot of people seem to like project that if only I had this, then I would be close, because I think a lot of people have this longing for closeness that, I mean, lots of people have damaged attachments, and we have a very, very difficult society that we try to live in.
And so we project that on all the non-human animals.
I think so. Sometimes, yes.
Often, yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really sort of fascinating point, that the more kind of broken we are as sort of individuals within, sort of difficult familial situations for whatever reason, that the harder, the more there is this drive to have this, relationship with someone who's innocent and pure, and that becomes the animal. And then through that, there can be some peculiar distortions in those relationships, which aren't necessarily. I mean, I think my relationships with horses were something like that. I think I was projecting an awful lot, and it took me a long time to sort of extract myself from the relationship that I was in, or extract the kind of baser motives of myself from the relationships that I was in. Sorry, Eileen, I saw you had your hand up. Do you want to? I was there talking away about my horses. Yes.
Oh, it's okay. I was gonna, excuse me for my voice. I was actually going to comment on them, and I wanted to thank you also for starting out with "Don't go and do this." I have had, I guess, the fortune or misfortune of being very empathic, and so my first experience with elephants was at the Bronx Zoo, and the heaviness. Also, the circus in New York City. And it was at the circus, I think Gabe knows this story, but it was before I was in first grade. So I probably was 4 or 5. And you could buy peanuts before the circus and go feed the elephants. And I had gotten my parents to agree to do this, which I don't know how we got there early. We never made it on time to anything, but we were there early enough for me to do that. And I was so little that I looked down and saw the chain on the elephant's legs. And I said, I never want to go back again. And I never did. And I never went into the elephant houses again at the Bronx Zoo. They had sort of an outdoor exhibit where you would go on a tram. And I could handle that because I had this false sense that they were free and we were in cages. But you also mentioned horses and then people wanting to be near them and the damage it can do to some people. I don't know where that would fit into my story as far as the severe attachment and abandonment wounds that I have. But I actually always thought animals are separate and wanted to ask them and talk to them about their experience, wanted to know what they were thinking or what they wanted. And I wonder, there was a point where I had to take a call, so I might have missed this if you said it. I found that in my last encounter with animals in that kind of situation, which was horses, and I had decided that because where I moved, I would try horseback riding again. And it was horrifying. I was flooded with the most horrific images of horses being broken. And I kept thinking it was me at first. I think I lasted maybe 12 weeks. A couple of times I went on the trail myself, and then it was better. But when I was near the riding school, it was so bad that even then, although I was not nearly as aware as I am now, this was 30 years ago, I thought, no, I'm getting this from the horse. These are the images that he is reliving. And he was a gentle, huge horse. And one time when I fell, I went flying over him. I was going too fast and I got really nervous because there were all these tree roots up ahead and we were galloping along and I said, whoa, too fast. And he stopped and I flew over him and landed on my back in front of him. And he was just standing there, looking at me like, what are you doing down there?
Mm.
And just was so kind and so gentle. But I had to stop. And so I wonder how common this experience is. And maybe people don't know what it is. I don't think I knew that when I was younger, but certainly 30 years ago, even then I realized it had to be coming from the horse because I had never seen this happen before.
Mm.
I'm just curious about that and how many people get a sense like that. Thanks for all your work, everything you do.
Thank you.
Michelle said we're all kindred spirits here.
Mm.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. I think it makes me think, I wonder if we don't sometimes misunderstand children, because I think a lot of children very easily, they just do this. They pick up emotions and images, and depending on who you are, it can be sounds, it can be images. We're all different, but they communicate because they haven't learned that it's impossible yet. So until someone tells them that, they just do it. And I think sometimes children will, with horses especially, because they are very often badly treated and they have these horrific experiences of really severe violence. Sometimes I think children pick up on images like you describe, and they're terrified, and then they're seen as afraid of horses. Okay, she's just scared of horses. It's a big animal, but it might not be the horse. It might be what a horse is actually has experienced, and that you pick up on.
That makes perfect sense, because for a long time I didn't know why I hated Civil War sites, anything to do with the Civil War, until I started remembering more.
Yes.
But I had felt that way my whole life. I hated it, and I couldn't. And there's many reasons to dislike it, because it represents slavery in my mind. I mean, many reasons as a Northeastern American to dislike it. But I later realized it was that these images were coming through. And drawing that connection with children, I think, is really important. And it's very similar that the things that were projected onto me are amazing. Starting at 18 months, well, probably starting from birth, but in my trauma, what everyone else told, the story everyone else told, and what I was experiencing are two completely different worlds. So I'm quite sure we do that with animals. And it's why I think it's so important to advocate for their agency. And I know Michelle mentioned this a lot. And during Michelle's presentation, I found myself identifying with the elephants far more than with her. Although I've also done that kind of work too, but I really identified with the elephant. So I think I still do, probably. But thank you so much for sharing your whole process of evolution.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us actually also have all kinds of communication and memories and experiences as young, and then in the so-called Western society, we are taught that this is not happening. It is not true, as in what other things are true, and it creates this huge conflict in many young people that they have to deal with. That it's obviously it's not true. What is it then? And instead of just embracing. Actually, the researcher that I mentioned with the physics, what I really liked with her was that she said that this is actually a proof that things that we when we talk about telepathy, and that it's that is just imagination, that it actually objectively exists. And that she said that
Exactly.
we will just come to this shift when we, just like when we realize that the earth was actually not flat, it'll be the same. We would just realize that, of course, it works because it's nothing strange. So I found that a bit uplifting, she said.
It's like the water. If you know the story that, the fish swimming in the water, the older fish says, "How's the water?" The two younger fish swim by, and one of them finally says, "What's water?" I mean, like, we are told that. I was very lucky that my mother encouraged me a lot to have alternate beliefs that now she didn't live by them. I mean, I will say that, and that was of issue. And certainly there weren't things I could take out into the big world because she wasn't able to. I mean, it was frowned upon, or you were thought of as being not as smart, not as able as other people.
Yes.
But I think you're right that it probably is true that it's proof positive of all kinds of communication.
It made me think about a story. I met a woman who was running with a Springer Spaniel, and we used to have a Springer Spaniel in the family whose name was Meg, and Meg was a very lovely person. And so this Springer Spaniel looked very like Meg, and I was kind of sort of swooning slightly and just about to reach down, but the dog had it's like a service dog thing. So then, I asked her, okay. Anyway, she told me the story of this dog, and the dog had been in, and he was just, he was just running alongside with her, looking up at her. He was, your dream dog in terms of not going to run out into the road and get run over or chase a hare and catch it. I mean, he was just sort of like there with her. And anyway, she said that the dog he had gone through two or three different homes, and both of the homes had said they could not stand him, that he was crazy, that he was untrainable, that he was awful and everything. So they had sort of taken him on as a rescue. I think that, the second people, they maybe knew them vicariously through somebody. So they took the dog, and everything was sort of going fine. They were doing sort of clicker training to recall and all these basic things, and everything was going fine. And then on two occasions the dog did this, and I can't remember what the crazy behavior was, but it involved sort of like running around barking and getting very anxious and being kind of hysterical, and it happened twice. Anyway, they worked out the woman had this dangerously low blood pressure problem at a particular condition. And both times that it had happened was when the dog had sensed that her blood pressure was dipping below a certain level. And so the dog was obviously incredibly sensitive to what was going on in his environment. And she did sort of like online this service dog training for service dogs for people who have low blood pressure. Who knew?
Wow.
And the dog, I mean, they're very smart dogs, and and then the dog had a job, and he knew that when that frightening thing happened, he did this thing. He had the control of that situation. He took control. He stopped. He did, he did his things. He knew what to do, and he was he had he had a role to play rather than just being in this situation of everything's going wrong and what am I doing now? And it had completely, he didn't have this sort of like dog hysteria or trauma response anymore, because he could make sense of the environment that he was in. And it made me think, I wonder how often when animals have behavioral issues, when they're responding, I mean, of course, to previous trauma, it could be, but maybe they're responding to to those things in us, our hidden griefs or hidden pains, or whatever unknown health condition. And you can explain all that reductively with different scents or sounds or whatever, but maybe they can sense something wrong, in that very connected way of just knowing when something's wrong and wanting to be able to do something about it, and needing to have the possibility to be able to do something about it. And that dog had that, and it was important to him to be able to do something about the situation that frightened him.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And I also think that we tend to think that, like, especially domesticated animals who live close to us, that they should like all be the same, like there is this ideal dog. But actually in a group, they will be very different. Like some will be much more sensitive than others, because that's how a group works, right?
Yes.
And so if you have an individual who is very, very sensitive, he might need something else than another dog, but instead it's very often seen as he's problematic, he's difficult, he's acting out, or disobedient, or whatever label we want to put on it.
Kathleen has said the dog was seen and his behavior validated. He wasn't crazy. Yes, he was seen. Exactly, Kathleen. I think that puts it really well. That it was like, there's Lassie, the boys in the well, and just imagine if all the time people were just saying, Lassie, shut up.
Yes.
It would be just awful. And this dog was able to say, the blood pressure's in the well.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Yes, he was her savior. Well, if no one else has any more questions, we could let you get back to your children and your cats and your dog and the later part of a Swedish evening.
Yes, the cat was let out now. He wanted to go out, so he's fine. But the others are here. Yes. Yes.
Ann Mitchell has a question, Ann?
Yes.
It wasn't actually a question. It was just a statement that I think that the same sort of thing is done with children, at least in the Western world, of not being seen. So I wrote my experiences down in a very short illustrated children's book that was titled "I Knew When I Was 5," because I started having experiences where I knew the thing we were doing with the animal was wrong. And the first thing was with a lobster. My family, my extended family is from Massachusetts. My uncle had these traps in Boston Harbor. He brought lobsters out to the lake where my grandparents lived. The kids played with the lobsters all day, and then the adults picked them up and killed them. It was insane. And I went in, I was 5 years old, and I tried to pull the pots over to get them out. And I was spanked and sent to bed without dinner and told how wrong I was. I wrote all these things down. It took a couple decades to stop eating animals. It has taken an entire life to know they're all like us. But we do the same thing to our children that we were doing to the dog, right? We say, you don't know what you're talking about. You're wrong. And I don't know why can't we talk about this? So I mean, it doesn't matter if it's a domestic cat or a squirrel or a bee or an elephant or a horse. And when people have read my book, they come back and say, oh my God, I had experiences like that too. Like how many of us actually know when we're really, really young that what we're doing is wrong, but it gets beaten out of us from our culture, from our parents, from, whatever. I mean, in the United States, the whole 4-H program, that's exactly what it's about, beating empathy out of the children. And the stories that come out of there are horrific.
Mm.
And yet they never make they make the animal rights rounds, but they don't make the news rounds, right? And all that crap is put up at the state fairs and wherever as being really cool, and it's not. It's so completely not. And so I just wonder what we can do. Well, we are doing, right? We are doing a lot to get this out, but what will it take to get it into the consciousness of a whole lot more people? Because I think people are having this experience. I think a lot of adults are walking around with those memories, but they're afraid to say it out loud because they'll be seen as weak, stupid. Empathy has a bad name now. I mean, that's one of the more insane things I can imagine.
But it's radical, so we can be radical.
Yeah.
Right. So I just wanted to make that point that I think that there are a lot more of us, and yet I think most people are afraid or have buried it so deeply. And I wonder what impact that has on our entire society, given where we are right now. So it was just a rant.
Yeah, no, thank you. It was beautiful. And I think actually what you are doing right now is one part of what we need to do, like that you connect to your own emotions. I think that is a very, very important thing. And I find, as I said, I've been working within sectors of animal abuse and people who have witnessed a lot of animal abuse. And I find they are very often they often suffer from compassion fatigue or vicarious trauma, and it's actually worse in people who work with animals or just see animals suffer than with people who see humans. And that is there is research on that as well, and it says that it is worse in those of us who work with animals because we don't have the same connection to people who understand. Like if you suffer from what you witnessed with an animal or what you just feel that animals are suffering from, you're told that, okay, but it's just animals, or we should value humans more, or if it's so difficult, just stop working with it. And this makes it much, much worse for those who work with animals. So I think a very important part is actually to try to connect to our own emotions and take care of them as good as we can. But that is a part of it as well. Of course, we have to advocate for animals also and do the work, but I think also like being in contact with these emotions, and they can be so incredibly painful because we are told so early that what we feel and experience is wrong, and that is so painful for a child if it comes from parents and adults who you are close to. But I think it is important to value that and take care of it.
I think both of you and others have touched on a really important element, and that's we fear each other. And you've spoken about that, about what a relief it is to be able to just talk like we are now. We're just talking and feeling supported and able to be fully ourselves. And I think that, we're so fearful of other humans that it really is counteractive in terms of not only what we're trying to bring to light, which is the plight of non-humans, but ourselves. And so it constantly undermines ourselves. And so I think that this cultivating this inner sense of confidence and believing yourself, the way you're talking about it, Therese, is vital. To look inward to fortify that and respect that, and also work with why we are fearful. Charlie Russell, everyone hears me talk about Charlie Russell, who's the bear person with whom I worked. He said, being fear determined, which our culture is really damaging. Being fear informed is helpful, because that's a kind of an emotion that kind of says, oh, that's kind of weird, or maybe I shouldn't go down this road because it looks like there's a lot of, all those kinds of things. That's information that we get in. But to really cultivate a relationship with fear and not let it dominate us. And to, that's where in Buddhist traditions, and, Diksha and I work on some of the teachings is to really respect yourself and see that yourself is vital and that we are truly voices for those who are not voices. I don't think they're not voices. I just think we've just been talking. They're just ignored and heard.
Yes.
So I think that's really a critical thing is understanding that not being afraid of fear is one way of putting at it, and not making assumptions about. I mean, there's obvious kinds of things, as I've shared with other people here. I was going to have a campaign, to ban hunting because I wrote Carnivore Mind, so it's going to ban. We're going to be the first county, right? To have ban guns. And I spoke to our environment. I won't get into the long story, but a man who's a wonderful person, he's an environmental nonprofit attorney for many years, and he grew up here. And he's such a sweet person. He goes, "Gay, I don't think that's a good idea." And it's true, because I have to be fearful of protecting my sanctuary because they would literally slaughter. In fact, we do get people who slaughter our animals, the wildlife here on purpose because we're a wildlife sanctuary and whatever, because of what I write. So there are some things, yes, obviously to work within the bounds that we have to do. But I strongly encourage in the venues of academia and in the public to speak your truth. And as you guys know, I use science as a heuristic. I don't even believe in the brain. I mean, it's obviously there, but it's a heuristic. So there's tools to reach in communication. But I think the real revolution, what is happening in the spiritual movement, of which quantum physics has been, attached for a long time or connected, there is a new paradigm, and to push and to be that new paradigm and talk about it, I think is very liberating for a lot of people. We've had people on here, and in my own personal experience, the stereotype grown men, successful men, and their life has been seared since as a child they had to witness something that was just so outrageous. And 50 years later, they are, awakening to that and finally are feeling quote unquote brave enough, if you want to call it that. But I think that's really an important thing, is to lose fear of our own species, because it's destructive to ourself, and it's destructive to what we're trying to really cultivate, which is relationships among humans, which are what we see and experience with other animals. So thank you.
Yes, thank you. And yes, I think this touches upon what I said, that people sometimes said when they read the book that, oh, but I have experiences, but I would never be open with it. And for me, it was like, okay, but why? If you feel liberated by me sharing this book, why do you still feel that you can't do this? Because they're afraid, and afraid to be viewed as unprofessional or whatever. Yes, but we need to share it more, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Eileen's asked that $1 million question: why do we all fear each other so much? And yes, I don't know that we can necessarily answer that here, but that kind of sort of like comparison thing, and wanting other people to like us or to respect us, or and within a particular paradigm, to be liked and respected maybe means that we feel that in order for that, we'd have to kind of at least pretend to conform to certain views that we might not really hold so dear.
Well, I'll add one more thing to that. I think that the modern culture has developed into a culture of complete dishonesty. So there's a superficial getting along and everything like that. But deep down, are we really honest with each other? In other words, can we cultivate, which, of course, I think is the spiritual practice, is cultivate a greater and greater expansive sense of self, A, and then B, to really to be able to take in when someone does something mean to you, you know what I mean, or that makes you potentially fearful. So I think that honesty and being genuine in a gentle way, you know, not like, you know, that classic thing like, that dress looks awful on you. I mean, there's these, but I mean, in the sense of really genuine looking into the depth of that person in that capacity. So I think that the fearfulness comes from really is that we are so used to functioning, particularly academia, particularly in these very kind of organizational dominating kinds of things. We play along with dishonesty. And, you know, that's the kind of, that right there to me is the, is something, if we can be more honest, take the time, sit down, have a cup of tea with someone and say, you know, I'd like to talk about this. I think that would really change things in a dramatic way.
Yes.
Thank you. Well, if we've wrapped up our questions, all that remains for me is to say, Therese, thank you so much for your time this evening. And we really appreciate you sharing your story with us. And when can we expect When Elephants Dream to be published in English language editions?
Yes, that is a question that I can't really answer, but because since I haven't sent it to a publisher yet, but this is also because I am writing an afterword, a second afterword, because there is already an afterword, but since there's been 5 years, and 5 years when the world has gone through so much, like, as I said, it was published in Swedish in the beginning of the pandemic, and things have exploded since then, and I think I have to put this somehow into the book, some of the thoughts and feelings I have around that. So as soon as I've written that afterward, I'm going to send it to a publisher. So hopefully not too far away. Yeah, well, thank you for inviting me. Also, I'm very, very so nice to have met you all. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining us, and Therese, for everything you shared with us today, and everybody else joining us today. This has been incredible and so meaningful. A week from today, we will have our final Living One gathering, Friday, December 12th at 10 a.m. Pacific time. We will be joined by David Ebert, who will tell us about When Elephants Paint. And like I said, this will be our final live gathering of Living One for 2025, though we will be sending out the week afterwards on the 19th pre-recorded conversation with Suparna Ganguly, which will be wonderful, but not a live gathering given the incredible time difference. So we will see you all next week to close out our live gatherings for Living One in 2025, and then hopefully you will all enjoy Suparna a week later, and then we will see you in the new year. So thank you, everybody. Thank you so much, Therese, and we hope you guys have a great rest of your day, night, afternoon, all across the world. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.